In November 1994, 16-year-old Eddie Polek was murdered in the city of Philadelphia. The crime occurred after the Philadelphia Police Department had received 20 or more calls about a group of teenagers moving through the neighborhood, smashing cars with baseball bats, making noise, and generally creating havoc. Members of this mob caught Eddie Polek leaving the area and beat him to death on the steps of St. Cecilia's Church. Despite all of the calls for help, it took police 41 minutes to respond and caused Eddie to not make it. The public outcry and resulting investigation found that the Philadelphia Police Department spent less than 2 weeks training with their new call takers. The responsibilities of 911 operators need to be strictly enforced. The 911 operators need to know and understand the responsibilities of emergency telecommunications better. For instance, a call can last anywhere between 5 to 45 minutes or more. Because some of the calls can be a matter of life or death, you would hope the 911 operators know what he or she is doing. There are 6 responsibilities of a 911 operator. They are telephone interrogation, call prioritization, dispatch, resource allocation, coordination of logistics, resource networking, and of course impacting lives via telephone. Imagine if, about a minute into a 911 call, the caller reported that a small child, maybe 4 years old, was standing in the front seat of a car next to the driver. The caller positioned his vehicle in back of the slow-moving car, puts on his flashers, and flashed his brake lights. Frightened and angry motorists passed the pair as the police responded. The call taker and dispatcher directed a patrol car to meet the two on the highway, and the suspect's car was alerted to stop. Finally, the car's driver pulled into the median. This hazard was removed from the highway, and everybody was safe. As it turned out, the driver was not intoxicated, but instead was the child's grandfather. He had left in the family vehicle to pick up the child at his daycare at about 9 o'clock that morning and had not been seen since then. By 4 in the afternoon, the local police were at the parents' house taking a report on the missing pair. Apparently, the grandfather picked up the child, but accidentally lost his way back home and wandered almost 40 miles away over a 6-hour period. The grandfather, child, and parents were reunited on the side of the road, and all were safe thanks to the resource coordination performed by the call taker. Imagine what could have happened if the call taker did not understand or perform her responsibilities of this occupation. The policy, procedures, and protocol are not being strictly enforced, which causes major consequences to occur. A policy describes a general course of action that is desired or required in certain circumstances or events. This means that the information in a policy helps establish the state of mind or thinking that should be addressed in that particular situation. For example, a policy on a fire agency response to fire emergencies would be to discuss the reasoning behind sending certain types of apparatus and crews to various types of fires. This policy statement helps to give the employee the context of the situation. The employee can then apply the reasoning of the policy to other similar situations. A procedure describes the specific steps or actions to be completed in a specific 1, 2, 3 steps of handling situations. Since all situations do not necessarily follow the book, procedures are open to limited interpretation and adjustment by the employee to make them fit that particular event. As referring back to the November 1994 situation, 16-year-old Eddie Polek 911 call, most of the 911 operating training was focused on the operating of the computer system and learning personnel rules. There was no training in call handling, gathering information, or prioritization of calls, and other basic telecommunication skills. Those call takers had no simulation training and were taking life-threatening calls on their own in only 2 weeks. Call takers involved in this situation were disciplined for their actions, which included transfer to other city departments for some and outright dismissal for others. However, the dispatchers union opposed the discipline and all employees were reinstated in their jobs. The blame was placed on the agency for failure to properly train their employees to handle the situation. If the call taker would have used the right policies and protocol, Eddie might have survived. Depending on the agency's service level and configuration, the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed to properly complete job tasks may vary from agency to agency. Discovering what you need to learn, what skills you need to update, and where your own abilities are weak is critical to training as an emergency telecommunicator. A protocol is a highly defined procedure placed into a reference system. It is designed to lead the call taker through a predictable, repeatable, verifiable process for a specific situation. For example, if a caller is trapped in a burning building, the protocol ensures that the call taker identifies the caller's exact location to facilitate a rescue by the responders. The protocol also prompts the call taker to provide specific instructions to the caller to help them remain as safe as possible until responders arrive. The questions and potential instructions remain the same for every structure fire so that special emergencies are not neglected and all incidents of this call type are handled consistently. 911 operators are not obeying all the codes of ethics of the National Academies of Emergency Dispatch. The Code of Ethics are emergency telecommunications endeavors to put needs of the public above their own, continually seek to maintain and improve their professional knowledge, skills, and competencies, and should seek continuing education whenever possible. The emergency telecommunicator should obey all laws and regulations. They should avoid any contactor activity that would cause unjust harm to the citizens they serve. Emergency telecommunications should be diligent in carrying the performance of their occupational duties. They also should establish and maintain honorable relationships with their peers and with all those who rely on their professional skills and judgment. 911 operators should assist in improving the public's understanding of emergency dispatch. Emergency telecommunications should assist in the operation of and enhance the performance of their dispatch systems and seek to maintain the highest standard of personal practice. They need to also maintain the integrity of the National Academies of Emergency Dispatch by exemplifying this professional code of ethics. An ethical dilemma occurs when our own personal system of ethics and values differs from that agency. For instance, perhaps that policy, procedure, or protocol does not balance with your own beliefs, or your own personal system of ethics and values is different. You must make a decision on which choice as to what action to take. Imagine if a telecommunicator was to receive 2 prowler calls from different neighborhoods at the same time. There is only 1 police unit to send to a call, meaning that 1 call would have to wait. However, if one of these 2 calls comes from very near the telecommunicator's home, which call should be dispatched first? In the occupation of telecommunications, 911 operators need to know their responsibilities better. The policies, procedures, and protocol need to be strictly enforced, and emergency telecommunicators need to obey the Code of Ethics of the National Academies of Emergency Dispatch. The police department could counter-argue that the emergency telecommunicators do not follow the rules and regulations to their ability and do not need to be further trained, but clearly after analyzing communications policy, procedure, and protocols, they do need extra training.